A frail, malnourished 5-year-old child would be pronounced dead on January 15, 1998 in Hughes Spalding Children's Hospital, suffering from a cardiac arrest due to the state of Georgia's failure to protect countless victims of abuse. Today's story is a case about a young child who was tortured and beaten to death by his foster mother and betrayed by the state of Georgia's government. I'm Kamaya Harris, and today I will be discussing the upsetting case of Terrell Peterson. So, who is Terrell Peterson? Terrell Peterson was born in the United States on March 1, 1992, in Atlanta, Georgia. He was one of 3 children born into a life of drugs and abuse. Doctors allegedly claimed that when Terrell was born, his blood was found with traces of cocaine due to his mother's abuse of drugs during the pregnancy. Due to Terrell's mother's drug addiction, the DFCS, Division of Family and Children Services, concluded that Terrell and his siblings could not live with their mother. In the state of Georgia, the rules regarding moving a child to a new family are strict, considering his case was under state supervision. Children are supposed to be moved in with blood relatives, and under no circumstances is a foster parent allowed to hit a foster child. The children are supposed to be visited every month. None of these requirements were met. Terrell was placed in the care of his half-sister and half-brother's grandma, Farina Peterson, meaning they weren't directly related. No required monthly visits were made as well. Had they visited, they might have discovered the things that Terrell was enduring in the house. Starting back in May of 1992, the abuse of his biological mother began to show outside of the house. The Fulton County Department of Family and Children Services received the first of 7 calls within the span of 3 years, 1992 to 1995, about neglect of either Terrell or his siblings. In May of 1992, they received the first call about Terrell's mother taking drugs and welfare checks and food stamps to buy crack cocaine. The second was in August of 1993 and was a call about the parents locking the children in their bedroom on weekends, denying them access to food and water. In February of 1994, the mother was heavily abusing drugs and the children were left unsupervised, which led to yet another report. January of 1995, neighbors reported the children begging citizens for food while their mother was unavailable on drugs. And by November of 1995, the mother is extremely addicted to cocaine, leading her to leave the children with their sick maternal grandmother. The complaints were allegedly handled by 11 different caseworkers, overseen by 10 supervisors at the DFCS, and yet nothing was done until June of 1996, when Terrell's mother finally lost custody of him. When Terrell's mother lost custody of him, he was placed in the care of Farina Peterson. Farina was born on September 15, 1947, and passed away on May 1, 2023. She's the grandmother of Terrell's half-siblings Tommy, a 6-year-old, and Tasha, an 11-year-old, at the time of Terrell's unfortunate passing. As mentioned before, it is against protocol for a child to be placed in the care of someone who is not blood related to them. When he was in her custody, not once was Terrell visited by the DFCS, and there was little to no contact made between the two. The abuse was uncovered when Terrell was brought to Hughes Spalding Children's Hospital, suffering from cardiac arrest, where he subsequently died. During the homicide investigation, it was discovered that Terrell would be tied up with a pantyhose tied to a banister in the apartment. Tasha, another child living in the home, Terrell's half-sibling, told investigators after Terrell's death that Peterson would tie Terrell up, quote, a lot, end quote. The police also found a written list of instructions allegedly written by Peterson. Quote, he gets a bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, lunch he gets grits, dinner he gets grits, his hands are always tied, end quote. According to Terrell's Head Start teacher, Joanne Bryant, she found him searching a school trash can for food. This happened prior to Thanksgiving Day, when Terrell was beaten so badly he was taken to the emergency room where he was diagnosed with battered child syndrome. Farina Peterson was indeed arrested at one point and indicted on misdemeanor charges. Terrell, who implied before that Farina was abusing him, was scheduled to testify in court. However, his caseworker, Cheryl Elmore, who was supposed to bring Terrell to court, never appeared. Terrell in his caseworker's absence was not questioned, and the charges were dismissed due to the victim not being present in court. If this wasn't bad enough, instead of admitting that she was irresponsibly handling Terrell's case, she decides she wants to cover it up. Elmore created a fraudulent predated internal memo that was then placed in Terrell's file stating that the trial did happen and no evidence of child abuse was found, so the charges were dropped. Despite the medical evidence left on Terrell's body, the evidence from the police investigation, and the lack of court documents, Elmore was not questioned on this memo by her supervisors. Due to this, Terrell was deemed, quote, safe, end quote, and put back into the custody of Farina Peterson. When Terrell returned to his Head Start class, his teacher noticed he couldn't walk properly. She removed his shoes to reveal that the flesh on the bottom of both of his feet had been burned off, so severe that Terrell would need a skin graft, which is when the skin is removed from a healthy, unaffected part of the body and used to cover lost or damaged skin. This was alleged to be the doing of Farina Peterson due to Terrell telling the authorities about the previous abuse he experienced. Concluding 2 internal investigations, the DFCS declared that, quote, failure to make contacts, a serious lack of judgment, and numerous violations throughout the history of the case, end quote, were the cause of Terrell's passing. The public was never made aware of this conclusion, and department officials engaged in a, quote, cover-up. The department published only one public statement written by Ralph Mitchell, the administrator of the Atlanta area office, in which he stated members of the department experienced, quote, outrage at the loss of precious life, end quote, which is crazy because what? It took you like 3 years to act on it. Anyway, he would then go on to claim that although this happened, they reacted, quote, immediately and comprehensively, end quote, to the mentions about Terrell's abuse. It literally took 7 phone calls. Anyways, the statement further lied and said that the department followed all of its mandated steps involving Terrell's case. Not long after making the statement, Mitchell wrote a private memo to the department head at state headquarters confirming that the press release was indeed, quote, untrue, end quote, and that he was glad that no one in the media wanted to follow up on the case. Due to privacy laws in the state of Georgia, Terrell's case was unavailable to the public, leaving the cover-up unnoticeable. The evidential tampering became known after someone from the department anonymously sent the documents to Don Keenan, who was the lawyer who sued the state of Georgia on Terrell's behalf. Although Terrell was murdered due to willful neglect from the DFCS and higher-ups, they were still put in charge of Terrell's half-siblings Tommy and Tasha. The workers at the DFCS determined that they would be safe in the care of friend Peterson. The most angering part of all is that most of these people kept their jobs, including Elmore and the judge who dismissed the charges. Farina Peterson would receive a life sentence for Terrell's murder, and in December of 2002, Terry Lynn Peterson, the victim's aunt, would also be found guilty of Terrell's murder and sentenced to life. Ralph Mitchell would retire with a state pension. The Terrell Peterson Act would be passed in 2000 and gives doctors the right to take temporary custody of children with battered child syndrome in hospitals without the DFCS's approval. This case is truly disgusting, and it's incredibly sad that the officials we expect to be able to entrust our safety to did what these DFCS workers did. This is Kamaya Harris, and that is the case of Terrell Peterson.